Have you ever heard a story of someone overcoming the odds and being so inspired by them? For example, maybe someone overcame a disability and ran a marathon, or someone else had this lifetime of just being overweight and they hit their goal. They really committed and they turned their life around. Or right now, I'm really hooked on this person, these people that buy these rundown houses or farm homes. Or the one lady I'm inspired by, she bought an old church, and with her own two bare hands, she has remodeled the whole thing by herself, not with a contractor, all on her own. And these are stories that inspire me. And there are travel stories that do the same for me. Well, welcome to Solo Travel Adventures. I'm Cheryl Esch. And part of being inspired by other people's travel stories is when I bring guests on, I hope that's what's happening when you listen to these people. They have inspiring stories, and I had a few last year that really still resonate, and I still think about them. And so first, we're going to revisit episode 126, where I had guest Lee Barbaric on my show and her inspiring story of her first solo trip internationally to New Zealand. So listen on in.
Well, I always wanted to take a trip by myself. I don't really know why, other than there's not always somebody to go with you. And so I just felt like I wish I was brave enough, to do
Mm-hmm.
it because I would see other people doing it. And I guess I would go to, all the bad things that could happen. And that would sort of scare me away. I will say that I put off the planning of the trip. I booked the airfare.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I finally decided to take the leap, I booked the airfare. And then I just sort of put the planning on the back burner because, life gets in the way. I have two kids, I have a job, and I almost sort of, I won't say I was in denial about it coming up, but it wasn't in the front of my mind,
Yeah.
you know? And so finally I realized, I'm leaving in a month and a half and I still have no accommodations. If you're by yourself, are you nervous about being by yourself somewhere? I always walk with purpose. Do you know what I mean
Mm-hmm.
by that?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
don't be aloof. Don't be on your phone. Don't
Mm-hmm.
look like you're lost, you know?
Correct.
Look like you know where you're going and you know what you're doing, because those people are much less likely to be bothered by someone else or to be approached by someone else.
So you can listen to Lee's full story of her courageous leap to go to New Zealand for the first time for her solo trip. And that's episode 126. She even talks a bit about specific places that she went in New Zealand. So if you're considering New Zealand, please go back and listen to her episode. She'll give you some ideas as well. And then next, I have another guest that really inspired me, thinking about some of the rough times that I've endured in my life, particularly divorce, just as my next guest will share in her story. I had Danielle Hebert, a dear friend of mine, that shared her story of how during her divorce, how God took her completely across the ocean to a whole nother country to heal from all the trauma and just everything that was happening in her life, and how that trip was actually almost a reset for her. Listen in.
I was going through a really crazy divorce after 32 years and COVID, everybody had that as well. And so I just one night was not sleeping very well. And I had that earlier that day, I had told my soon to be ex-husband, I was like, you can go anywhere in this world. I said, your job allows you to work from home, and mine did not. And so I did not sleep well that night. And I just felt moved that why couldn't I? Why couldn't I go anywhere else? And so I got up in the middle of the night. I did like most of us do and just start scrolling through and was looking for jobs. I'm an educator by trade. So I was thinking, okay, let's go to Europe. Let's go somewhere. And Kuwait popped up. And I was like, okay, let's see what this is. And it was a curriculum coordinator for Kuwait, an international school. And I was like, okay. And I was just looking at it. I thought, oh, I can do this. This sounds fun. And I honestly, it was amazing because I must have just clicked with the LinkedIn, which is pretty cool when you can do that. But I didn't, hadn't really updated my LinkedIn because I really wasn't thinking about that. So, but all worked out. I got a call, and within 2 weeks, I had a job offer. And then it took about 2 months to get all the paperwork ready to go, probably emotionally, socially, physically, spiritually, just drained. And I really just wanted a complete change. And I just felt like I needed that for healing. I needed to be able to just get away from the situation. And I think that's really, I know Cheryl and I've talked about this before. It's very different from just, hey, I want to run away from the situation. And sometimes you might feel that, but in the process, I think you need to really be introspective and go, what am I going to do to actually take care of me? Right. It was the first time in 30 some years that I was able to just kind of focus on me and not to try to be selfish, but I think that our generation as a whole, those of us that are in our 50s and 60s are just we were trained to be all right. Work, take care of kids, take care of the husband, and that is what women were to do. And at the expense of ourselves sometimes. That is how you know that God has a wonderful sense of humor, because
Yes.
he sent me to a Muslim country to spiritually heal.
And if you want to hear the rest of Danielle's story, check out episode 133. I loved her story, and I've loved traveling actually with her. We did the cruise together, by the way. And I have some good news on the front, is that she got remarried to her ex-husband. That they went through all that turmoil, but look at the fruits of what happened with her getting healed. He got healed. And it's a beautiful story, by the way. But go back and listen to episode 133 if you want to hear her story of her trip to Kuwait and how she utilized that time to find healing and restoration for herself, mentally, spiritually, and physically. I also had another guest, Linda Magoon, from episode 144, who also had a similar situation in just, kind of rebranding herself and getting out of a sticky situation in her marriage as well. But in the process, she tackled this huge goal that she set out for herself. And that really just changed who she was, physically and mentally, especially. And her story is in episode 144, as I said. And it's really about setting those goals and accomplishing and overcoming them, overcoming any obstacles and any negative things that had come her way throughout the process, and accomplishing that and being an inspiration to many other women in maybe the similar situation. So listen in to a clip of her story.
That's when my world opened up to me, and that's when I discovered hiking. And I had forgotten that I had liked it because it had been so long since I really did any serious hiking. I had this old beat up backpack that I had found the attic when I was moving out. And I thought, you know what? Let's try this. And Cheryl, the experience was so exhilarating. I think just trying something new and being able to do what I wanted to do without walking on eggshells, and how is he going to react, and ask for permission. I mean, it must sound weird to your listeners, but for somebody who was, trapped for so long,
Mm-hmm.
it was the best experience, going on a solo 8-mile hike by myself. Can I do this? I'd never been on a walk that long before. And, when you get back down from the mountain, it was just the most incredible experience. Trying to do something new, the
Yes.
the accomplishment of hiking a summit, or that was in itself healing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start on a little adventure, some of these, the average, I would say most of these hikes are between 8 and 10 miles. Some are longer, some are shorter. But that, when you're first starting out, you have all of this monkey chatter in your head, like, you know how am I gonna navigate my divorce, and how am I gonna live, and what am I gonna do for retirement, all this little stuff. And by the time you get to the top, all of that just sort of falls away, right? And
Yes,
enjoy
exactly.
able to enjoy the trees and the sounds of the birds singing, and just, especially if once you reach the summit, and you look over, you can look into Vermont or Canada or into Maine, and you realize, you're very tiny, but you're on top of this huge landscape that very few people get to see. And if I had still been married, Cheryl, there was no way I would be able to
Mm.
see these sights that I was now seeing. So for me, solo traveling, it was both logistical, but it was also a way of finding, and rediscovering myself too, and
Yeah.
healing.
You can hear all about Linda's story in full detail in episode 144. And she so inspired me. I really feel like a wimp when it comes to hiking compared to the summits that she has done. It's just incredible, and how that has changed her life. I had another guest last year, Tess Milholland, from episode 143. And she also shares a pretty inspirational story of her journey of healing through solo travel in Australia, after surviving sexual assault. So this story is quite unconventional of how she traveled around Australia. So listen in to her story.
And I really needed to just get away from everything and really kind of like reclaim myself, reclaim my body, and figure out who I was. And I really felt like solo traveling had a huge part in that process of like me meeting God on the other side of the world, on sailboats, and I won't give too much of away what's in the book, but it was just a really beautiful experience of solo traveling. And that's why I'm really so passionate and so excited to help more women have solo travel experiences too. Like what you're doing is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so, because I really like thought about just like staying, and because I was finally like getting money again and having some stability. But I think like what I really learned from that is like when opportunities present themselves, you have to go for it, because otherwise like these opportunities may pass you by and you'll never get them again. So, yeah, that's probably my biggest takeaway. As a solo traveler, you really get to know yourself on a deeper level than you ever have before in your life. And so you really get to know what you truly want in your heart, and you know how to decipher it, and you get really good at making decisions. Because before I went to solo travel, I always felt like I needed to ask everyone's opinion in order to make a decision, right? I would ask my mom, my dad, my boyfriend, my brother, I would ask people what they thought. And I went through things, and I talk about this in my book, how there are things that I was going through that no one else could understand. Like when I was like getting on different yachts, and I like was trying to explain the situation, but the thing is like no one could give me insight on what to do. No
Right.
one had done what I'd done.
Mm-hmm.
No one had felt what I felt. No one has seen what I seen. Like, I had to be able to make this decision. And I think having that ability has served me so much beyond that specific trip. Like being able to make your own decisions, know in your heart what you want, and then be able to go for it, has served me tremendously throughout my professional life, even.
Well, if you'd like to hear her full interview, you can go back to episode 143 and hear all of Tess's story of her fun times in Australia. But if you really want to hear her full story, she did write a book called Sherbet Skies, and it is testimony that no matter how far you travel, you're never truly alone, which also inspired, and I have news here since I've recorded that, she has launched or relaunched Her House. And so you can go to herhouse.co. It is a way to connect with other women and stay with other people that are background checked. And so creating a community of women supporting one another in their solo travels. So I'm so happy that for Tess and her launching that new project. Well, these have all been very inspirational stories, but it is a new year. And I know there are other people out there that have just as inspirational and different stories, because we all have stories, as I mentioned last week's episode. But I'm looking for your story to share here on my podcast. So if you think you have a story that could inspire other women with solo travel, but specifically travel that in these women's cases has presented an opportunity for transformation, whether it's healing halfway across the country, the world to Middle East for Danielle, or going on yachts for Tess, or climbing those mountain peaks like Linda did, you have a story to tell. And it doesn't even have to be that extravagant. But travel can be transformative, as these women have attested to in their stories or their interviews from last year. But let's get the word out there that there are other stories that I would love to share. So if you feel you have a story that you could share on my podcast related to solo travel and a transformation that has happened for you during that time, then please contact me. You can contact me by email, hello@cherylbeckesh.com, or I will leave a link in my show notes for where you can actually just schedule a little discovery call so that we can chat and see if you'd be a good fit to get on my show. I would love to hear your story and love other women to hear your story. So don't be shy. Let's hear it and reach out to me now.